Hey guys, and welcome to Unit 2, Lesson 2. We are talking about community and specifically newsrooms that are able to access marginalized communities and sometimes empower them to tell their own stories, giving us access to new narratives that we haven't heard before. Now, we start in Lebanon. I've been to this country. It's really amazing. Well worth a visit if you haven't been. But you don't need to go there to find amazing newsrooms that are doing interesting things. In fact, you can use the IMS database, jump in there and see what's going on. And one of the examples that you'll find is a newsroom called Megaphone. The newsrooms around the world are starting to see the value of UGC, user-generated content. And I'm not just talking about the viral videos or the sad terror attacks and stuff that take place. I'm talking about other types of stories that are told by citizens on the ground, curated and fact-checked and verified by journalists. In fact, that's what we do at my organization. We help communities tell their own stories and we curate that into a series of different shows on mental health, physical health, the environment, entrepreneurship. Now, jumping back to Lebanon, there's an organization called Megaphone, and they're doing some really interesting work with user-generated content. Let's check it out. The story that we're first going to dig into is in Tripoli, and it's looking at students that are rebelling against harassment. So it's really interesting how they've described this story. They've said, today's lesson for students in Tripoli, this is how you pursue harassers. It's a vertical video which starts out by looking at how students are storming a principal's office, and that school principal is believed to have sided with a teacher who was accused of sexual harassment. So this video includes mobile footage, it includes video testimonials from the young woman who accused the teacher of harassing them, and it includes messages that they allege to have received. Now, it's really interesting how they formatted this video. Both the reporter and the interviewees appear in a little circle on the top right-hand corner while the visuals continue to play. Now, this is a different way of framing user-generated content. It's got production values, they've edited it, and it's got a reporter leading or driving the story forward, but it still allows the visuals to play out front and center. And I think that's really cool. And for many viewers, especially if they're used to watching traditional media, they're used to interacting with a reporter as the conduit of information, as the person that's helping to deliver their information, add a layer of credibility. And I think that's why this format works so well, combining the reporter with the user-generated content. As for the publication Megaphone in Lebanon, I don't think that they're positioning themselves as being down the middle or completely neutral. In fact, a lot of the journalists and reporters that work at this publication would have at some point in their lives been protesters on the ground. Hence the name of the publication, Megaphone! The publication saw a big gap in the market, addressing content to young audiences. In a country that's so young itself, we're increasingly becoming opposed to the sectarian parties that have ruled the country since the Civil War ended in the 1990s. Now, this is how Megaphone, the website, describes itself. We act as a watchdog to both the political establishment and the media landscape, opposing misleading and inaccurate stories and statements. And that's so valuable right now. In a landscape where there's so much false information and fake news, being able to have a media organization that is trusted by young people that can distribute and disseminate accurate information that's being fact-checked, including user-generated content, so we're still hearing real raw stories from the ground, is incredibly valuable. Now, you can find more incredible media organizations and projects like this in the IMS database. All right, let's look at another case study from our IMS database. Now we're looking at News 24, which is a multimedia publisher based in Cape Town, South Africa. They're huge and they do some really interesting work. Now, there was a massive story in South Africa about a young woman that went to a post office and ended up getting raped and murdered by one of the postal workers. It went viral around the world. Now, what News 24 did is that they piggybacked on the hashtag #AmINext movement, which was already a big protest that was taking place across South Africa with young women calling on the government to do more to fight these kinds of crimes. So the way News 24 approached it is they created a space on their website to house letters from young women. So they're basically in text format, amplifying the perspective of young women, but on their big website, which reaches millions and millions of people every day. So this is an entirely new concept, and I think that's why it's really interesting. For the longest of time, newspapers had a letters section where people were sending letters to the editor, and you could see those letters from various members of the audience. This is effectively the same thing. It's just moving the letters section from a newspaper to a website and helping to amplify the perspective of a marginalized community, in this instance, young women in South Africa. So this is a great example of how user-generated content, user-generated letters in this instance, are being amplified by a big media organization, but written by everyday young women on the ground. And it's just one example from the IMS database of newsrooms doing really cool stories in interesting ways.